Arirang Special.
We should use this chance to increase our mutual.
서로 협력을 강화해서 위기를 이겨낼 수 있었습니다.
공통으로 직면하고 있는 각종 도전과 안보 위협 요인에 대해 활발하게 토의하게 될 것으로 보입니다.
Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. Leaders of Asian and European states walk on the red carpet. They have come to Ulaanbaatar to attend the ASEM summit, but they all have gloomy looks on their faces. It's because a terrible terrorist attack hit Nice, France on July 14th, one day before the summit.
What we saw happening in Nice is a terrible attack against innocent people celebrating their national day. Today we all stand together with the French people. Thank you very much.
President Park Geun-hye is the last leader to enter the summit venue. It means that she will be seated alongside leaders of the highest rank. The 11th ASEM Summit is the first Asian-European forum that promotes co-development and prosperity between the two regions. Its purpose is to discuss political, economic, social, and cultural issues in Asia and Europe, rather than forcing the outcome on its member states. By holding free discussions, the member nations expand trade and investment in Eurasia and strengthen cooperation in environmental problems and international terrorism. This year's summit began with a minute of silence for the victims of the terror attack in Nice, France.
We are together with the people of France and to begin our session with 1 minute silence.
2016 marks the 20th anniversary of the ASEM Summit.
Common and predictable rules make states more secure.
And best practices.
It was launched 2 decades ago to promote cooperation between Asia and Europe. This year, the ASEM Summit drew the attention of the world because of its special political, economic, and historic meaning. The global economy has finally begun showing signs of a recovery after a severe recession in 2008. But it's facing yet another challenge these days. Last month, the global economy was shaken by the UK's decision to leave the European Union. The reason Brexit has triggered serious concerns doesn't lie solely in its impact on the financial market. It also represents skepticism about globalization, which has so far determined the international economic order. One of the examples is the growing perception among low-pay, low-skill workers in advanced nations that they are losing their jobs to overseas workers. The anti-globalization sentiment instigated by Brexit may trigger unprecedented chaos in the global economy. Korea, which has received multiple benefits from the international economic order, can suffer a serious blow due to anti-globalization. On the first day of the ASEM summit, President Park Geun-hye urged Asian and European leaders to deal with protectionism and new isolationism caused by Brexit.
몽골, 중국, 러시아 국제 경제 환경의 불확실성이 날로 증대되고 있지만 우리는 세계 경제의 성장이 자유무역의 확산과 궤를 같이 했다는 역사적 교훈을 잊지 않아야 합니다.
She proposed a meeting of ASEM economy ministers in Korea next year in order to discuss solutions in more detail. If the meeting takes place, it will be the first economic ministers ASEM meeting in 13 years.
이제 아셈 차원에서도 자유무역의 기조를 더욱 공고히 하고 이를 통해 국가 간 경제적 격차를 줄이는 방안을 협의해야 할 시점이라고 생각합니다. 이를 위해 각국은 자유무역의 혜택이 각 계층에 골고루 돌아가도록 노력해 나가고
The president also said that the role of ASEM must be strengthened to promote solidarity and connectivity between Asia and Europe.
아셈 파트너십의 운영 메커니즘으로 채택이 되었던 혼자 꾸면 꿈이지만 함께 꾸면 현실이 된다고 합니다. 유라시아의 평화와 공동 번영이라는 우리의 꿈을 이루기 위해서 모든 아셈 회원국들이 함께 힘을 모아 나가기를 바랍니다.
After her speech, President Park held bilateral talks with the leaders of Laos, Vietnam, and the European Union to discuss issues of mutual concern. Mongolia, the host country of this year's ASEM summit, has the smallest population and GDP among all host nations thus far. By hosting this international event, attended by the leaders of more than 50 member states, it demonstrated its rising status. The two-day ASEM summit consisted of 2 general meetings and a retreat session.
Thank you. Now I call the Republic of Korea.
Unlike general meetings which were dedicated to the 20th anniversary of the ASEM summit, the retreat session presented world leaders with an opportunity to freely discuss issues of their concern.
In Shangri-La.
President Park urged Asian and European leaders to provide their support for resolving North Korea's nuclear issues, the most pressing issue in Northeast Asia. Since the North's 4th nuclear test in January, the international community has strengthened cooperation on North Korea. The South Korean government has also been deploying all diplomatic means to encourage a unified response to North Korea's provocations. Thanks to such efforts, China has been intensifying pressure on the North, its longtime ally. Uganda, another longtime friend of North Korea, said in May that it would suspend cooperation with the North in the fields of national security and military affairs. Bulgaria, which has served as North Korea's base in southeastern Europe, has also confirmed its cooperation on denuclearization on the Korean peninsula and sanctions against North Korea. Along with North Korea's denuclearization, the territorial dispute on the South China Sea also drew significant attention from the very start of the ASEM summit. Prime Minister of Japan Shinzo Abe and Premier of China Li Keqiang even clashed over the issue at the summit held at the sidelines of the ASEM. The two-day summit held in the Mongolian capital of Ulaanbaatar ended on July 16th with the adoption of 3 documents, including the chairman's statement, the Ulaanbaatar Statement, and a statement on international terrorism.
제11차 아셈 정상회의 폐회식에서 채택된 의장 성명에 박근혜 대통령께서 1세션에서 선도 발언하신 자유무역 확산, 포용적 성장, 아셈 경제장관회의 개최 제안 등 핵심 메시지가 그대로 반영되었습니다.
After the summit, President Park Geun-hye embarked on the second half of her 5-day trip to Mongolia. Let's take a closer look at Mongolia before covering the president's state visit to the country. Situated between Europe and Asia, Mongolia is more than 7 times the size of the Korean peninsula, but its population is only 3 million. In 1924, it became the world's second nation after the Soviet Union to adopt socialism, but it eventually chose democracy and the market economy in the late 1980s by implementing reforms and opening its doors to the world. Since then, Mongolia has achieved economic growth by using its underground resources. Recently, urban development is in full swing in Ulaanbaatar. The country has been also expanding power grids to increase electricity production. The Mongolian public has a positive perception of Korea thanks to the popularity of K-pop and Korean TV shows.
노래나 이런 드라마에 대해서 얘기하면 다 잘 알고 있고 아이들이 노래도 따라서 부르고 이런 거를 보면 역시 몽골에도 그 한국 한류가 굉장히 강하게 불고 있구나라고 볼 수 있더라고요.
Recently, Mongolia has been trying to end its reliance on China and Russia by cooperating with a third party. Korean businesses hope that Mongolia will choose to work with them.
시장 규모는 그렇게 크진 않지만 여러 가지 지정학적이나 경제 협력 분야에서 앞으로 협력 가능성은 높다고 생각하거든요. 지금 몽골이 추진하고 있는 자원 개발이라든가 신도시 개발 쪽에도 우리가 노하우를 갖고 있기 때문에 협력의 여지는 크다고 생각이 됩니다.
중요한 자본이었습니다.
7년 만에 다시 몽골을 방문하게 돼서.
This man is president of Mongolia, Zakigan Elbekdorj. At the bilateral summit, the leaders of South Korea and Mongolia agreed to launch joint research for the signing of a bilateral economic partnership agreement. It's a kind of free trade deal pursuing free trade of commodities and services. The two nations have agreed to begin joint research late this year or early next year. When the study is over, they will officially launch EPA negotiations.
참고로 말씀드리면 몽골은 지난 6월에 발효된 몽골-일본 EPA에 대해 몽골 내 부정적 여론 때문에 우리와의 EPA 관련 논의에 소극적 입장이었습니다. 그런데 이번 정상회담을 계기로 우리 설득이 주요하여 공동연구 개시에 합의하게 된 것입니다.
If Korea and Mongolia sign an EPA, tariffs on Korean cars and electronics exported to Mongolia will likely be lowered, while prices of coal and copper imported from Mongolia will also go down.
한몽 경제 동반자 협정 체결을 위한 공동 연구를 개시하기로 한 것을 기쁘게 생각합니다. 이러한 노력이 궁극적으로 양국 간 교역 및 투자 확대로 이어지게 될 것이라고 봅니다.
The two heads of state have also agreed to allow Korean businesses to participate in Mongolian infrastructure projects in the railway, electricity, and urban development fields, worth $490 million.
ингээд хатагтай ерөнхийлөгчийн Монголд хийж байгаа айлчлал бол үнэхээр одоо ганцаг дүүрэн ийм айлчлал байлаа. Энэ айлчлал хоёр орны хамтын ажиллагааг улам урагшлуулан бэхжүүлэхэд маш их чухал хувь нэмэр оруулна гэдэгт итгэж байна. Ингээд танд Монгол улсад тавтаа саатан барилгыг дахин хүсэн өрөөё.
There is one more field where the two nations have vowed to cooperate. It's the issue of North Korea. Since the establishment of diplomatic ties between Mongolia and North Korea in 1948, the two countries have been close allies despite a short period of estrangement. When the Mongolian president visited North Korea back in 2013, he made headlines by saying in his speech that no form of despotism can last forever. He urged North Korea to become a responsible member of the international community, saying that every regime has no other choice but to change. With Mongolia's economy growing 10% annually since the change of its political system, the Mongolian president's remarks were lauded for showing North Korea how a country can benefit from change.
오늘 정상회담에서 우리 두 정상은 북한의 비핵화에 대한 확고한 입장을 토대로 한반도 내 영내 안정을 위해 함께 노력해 나가기로 하였습니다.
After the summit, President Park Geun-hye met with 70 ethnic Koreans at a hotel in downtown Ulaanbaatar and offered words of encouragement. Currently, there are more than 3,000 ethnic Koreans in Mongolia. The number rose after the establishment of diplomatic ties between Korea and Mongolia in 1990. They've earned a good reputation for their volunteer work. The president expressed her gratitude to the ethnic Korean community for improving Korea's status in the world despite the difficult environment in a foreign land.
지금 우리 앞에는 경기 회복, 일자리 창출, 저출산 극복, 복지 증진, 북핵 문제 해결과 같은 수많은 과제들이 놓여 있습니다. 몽골의 동포 여러분께서 직접 보여주셨듯이 어려운 도전일수록 성취의 열매가 더욱 값지고 때로는 실패가 더 큰 성공의 밑거름이 될 수 있다고 생각합니다.
On the final day of her visit to Mongolia, the president met with the newly appointed chairman of Mongolia, Engbot, and Mongolia's newly appointed Prime Minister, Erdenbach. With this, she concluded her visit. The leaders of Asian and European nations must further consolidate their cooperation on terrorism, violent extremism, and North Korea's nuclear threat, as they have done over the past 2 decades. We believe that Korea's role in promoting peace and co-prosperity in Eurasia will only keep growing. Based on the past 20 years, we can expect a better future. Asia and Europe must make a choice to make that future come to pass.